Okay, I'm sorry, I'm very congested, so that's going to be audible in the video, I'm sure. Just like in the beginning of all of my videos, I like to give a little bit of a disclaimer. I live in a very busy home that's quite small, so there's bound to be a lot of noises. I have 2 dogs, 3 cats, 1 lizard, and 2 other human beings that I live with, so yeah, it is what it is. Anyways, today's video is going to be my top 10 favorite standalone stories. So I did a video where I talked about my top 5 favorite series, and I kind of like did cooking with it. Something that I kind of regret, because I like to include a lot of different stories in my videos, not just books. Like, I know that I veer a little more towards booktube, but I just like all kinds of stories. So in this lineup, it's not just going to be books, it's also going to be movies. If there were any games that I could think of, I would have included games, but when I thought about some of my favorite games, they're all like series games, like they're all part of a series. I did torture myself into organizing these 10 standalone stories in an order. So I am going to go from bottom to top, and I want to change these so bad, but I'm not going to, because I made a choice and now I'm going to stick to it, and I'm not going to change it, because if I do, then we'll be here all fucking day. So yeah, that's it. Also, I'm not saying that like objectively these are the best stories ever. I'm saying for me, like, what constitutes a standalone or a series to be something that is like my top favorite is more of like the impact that it had on me and how much I still remember it today. So some of these are at the top of a list, and I know that many people would probably be like, well, it's not that great. I'm like, no, maybe it's not, but I still remember it and I can't forget it, and I'm forever going to keep it in my mind and in my heart. So in 10th place, we have The Priory of the Orange Tree. So this book has a gorgeous cover to start with. It is chunky, but that's kind of deceiving because the font is quite large and the margins are massive. So really this book, like, I think it's like 800 and something pages, but in reality, if it had been printed like an average book, it probably would have been somewhere in like the 500s or something. This book is probably my kind of introduction into fantasy standalones, which is why I don't think I could ever really forget it. And it's incredible how vast and extensive this book goes into the world and the history and the mythologies and the people and the politics in a single book. It's impressive, honestly. Now, the thing is, this book, I didn't give it a full 5 stars, so you might be wondering, why is it on my favorites? Well, again, because of just how impressive it is with the amount that it puts into a single book. And because it was my first epic fantasy standalone, and I didn't even know that, you know, someone would do that. But I did really love everything about this book. The characters were amazing, the LGBTQ rep in it, the dragons, the different POVs were all very interesting. The only thing that kind of brought this book down was the ending for me. And I've seen a few people say that, yeah, they were a little disappointed in it. Even if you look, like, I was tabbing at the time, and at the end, there aren't as many tabs because I wasn't enjoying it as much. But my goodness, this book had such an impact on me. So if you don't know what Priory of the Orange Tree is about, I will go ahead and read the back for you. Ooh, damn. There's complicated fantasy words here. We all know that we don't know how to pronounce these. The House of Berethnet has ruled Innis for 1,000 years. Still unwed, Queen Sabrin the Ninth must conceive a daughter to protect her realm from destruction, but assassins are getting closer to her door. Eid Durian is an outsider at court. Though she has risen to the position of lady-in-waiting, she is loyal to a hidden society of mages. Eid keeps a watchful eye on Sabran, secretly protecting her with forbidden magic. Across the Dark Sea, I'm gonna say this in a French way. Across the Dark Sea, Tene was trained to be a dragon rider since she was a child, but is forced to make a choice that could see her life unravel. Meanwhile, the divided East and West refuse to parley, and forces of chaos are rising from their sleep. So yeah, there's a lot going on. I will say that some POVs I don't think I remember as well, like the kid who's being raised to be a dragon rider. That one I don't remember as much, but I do very much remember the queen and Eid and her secret society and all that. It's very interesting. It's very in-depth. It's amazing. I thought it was great, but it does require some time and brain power. All right, then in ninth place, I've got Juniper and Thorn. I also love the cover to this book. It's so dark and so like, I don't know, I feel like I haven't seen a cover like this before. Anyways, Juniper and Thorn is by Ava Reed, who is a new favorite author of mine. I'm gonna read the inside for you. A gruesome curse, a city in upheaval, a monster with unquenchable appetites. Marlikin, I'm gonna call her Marlikin. Marlikin and her two sisters live with their wizard father in a city shifting from magic to industry. As Oblia's last true witches, she and her sisters are little more than a tourist attraction as they treat their clients with archaic remedies and beguile them with nostalgic charm. Marlikin spends her days divining secrets and in exchange for rubles and trying to placate her tyrannical, xenophobic father who keeps his daughter sequestered from the outside world. But at night, Marlikin and her sisters sneak out to enjoy the city's amenities and revel in its thrills, particularly the recently established ballet theater, where Marlikin meets a dancer who quickly captures her heart. As Marlikin's late-night trysts grow from fervent and frequent, so does the threat of her father's rage and magic. And while Oblia flourishes with culture and bustles with enterprise, a monster lurks in its midst, born of intolerance and resentment and suffused with old world power, caught between history and progress, blood and desire. Marlikin must draw upon her own magic to keep her city safe and find her place within it. I just really loved it because I'm not usually into the very slow and like dark romantic-y. I don't want to say it's a dark romance because it definitely is not that, but it has romance and it is dark and it's not a happy read, but it really delves into the horrors of trauma and repression of oneself and what happens when you're kind of, permanently told that you're worthless, that you're not as good, and just all these horrible things, and this character who's dealing with pretty gruesome, intrusive thoughts and issues of self-worth, things like that, but somehow finds a connection with someone else and helps her grow stronger in I want to say in a healthy way, but it's everything is very, it's not a happy book. But one of my favorite parts of this book, and the reason that it is one of my top standalones, is because it really meshes together this idea of the old age coming into a new age and kind of the things that die and wither away, and the way that myths and legends and those things that kept people alive and connected to one another and to the earth around them is now, pushed aside for money. You have to adapt to the times. And there were so many aspects of this book that I thought was so cool, like the snake in the garden and the father and how he was a magician and how he was a terrible person. Oh my gosh. Anyways, point is, I really did love this one, and I think that it was almost powerful to read a character who's just so broken, and it was very relatable at times. So yeah, I don't know. This one had a strong impact, and I don't think I'm gonna forget about it anytime soon. Okay, so in 8th place, we have a movie this time. This movie came out in 1957, and it's called 12 Angry Men. I discovered this movie because of my mother. My mother told me, she was like, listen, one of my favorite movies ever is 12 Angry Men. I was like, what is it about? She told me, she was like, well, I don't really want to tell you too much, but it's basically about speaking up. And I was like, okay, that's a little vague. So I'm gonna read the synopsis to you. Following the closing arguments in a murder trial, the 12 members of the jury must deliberate, with a guilty verdict meaning death for the accused, an inner city teen. As the dozen men try to reach a unanimous decision while sequestered in a room, one juror casts considerable doubt on elements of the case, Personal issues soon rise to the surface, and conflict threatens to derail the delicate process that will decide one boy's fate. So I will say I've only watched this movie one time, and I feel like I should watch it again, but still to this day, the impact of that movie is amazing because it literally is just set in this one room. I'm pretty sure it's only one room at different angles of these 12 men who are deciding whether this boy is guilty or not. Now, mind you, the evidence is very big on the side of the kid is guilty, and yet one guy says, but what if he's not? And from there, so many things come up where it's like, you know, well, let's look at it from this side. This boy, this little kid is black. He's from a poor side of the town or of the city. And, you know, he's being accused of murder with a knife, but the knife, did it really belong to him? Blah, 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 all this stuff. And little by little, you start realizing that, well, there are bigots within the jury, and there are those who are essentially just, you know, trying to get out because, oh, well, they had jury duty and they didn't want to be here anyway. And they're like, well, yeah, of course the kid is guilty. And the one guy who he's just like, but what if he's not? Because ultimately, like, this is the kid's life on the line. So we should spend more time with it. It's not something you can just disregard. And for a movie that came out in what, 1957? My gosh, like even today, a movie would not have the balls to do and say the things that were done and said in this movie. If you have not watched 12 Angry Men, I highly recommend it. It is amazing. It definitely is more in the messaging of the movie rather than a story, but I love the simplicity of it. And I love that it has such a strong message and that it, you know, now I keep it with me all the time of, but what if? You never know what someone is going through. You never know what could be going on in their life, and you never know if it really is someone's fault. Yeah, it's just a great movie. It's good to, yeah, just watch it. Just watch it. So number 7 is a French movie that I watched when I lived in France, and I guess it became so popular that Hollywood tried to replicate it, but they kind of failed every time because just the way that this movie was done was fucking amazing. So it is a comedy drama, and it came out in 2011, and it's called Les Intouchables, which translates to The Untouchables. So I'll read the little synopsis. It says, a Parisian, I don't know how to say that. I'd say it in French. A Parisian, I don't know. A Paris aristocrat, a quadriplegic since a paragliding accident, hires a young man to be his live-in caretaker. Although very different, the two men bond and develop a close friendship. I mean, that's it. That's all you really need to know about, like, the premise of the movie, but the relationship that builds between them, this movie did so well showing those small kindness moments and gestures that can make someone feel like they matter again. And really, like, this movie starts off pretty rocky because the guy who gets hired as the caretaker, he literally goes in for an interview just because he needs to go in for an interview to say that he is looking for a job so that he can still collect, unemployment. But the guy hires him, and then he actually is like, well, I didn't actually want to do this. I don't know how to do this job. And he's like, well, you're going to do the job. And he fucks up a lot. He messes up so much. Like, he forgets these basic things that will help the guy who's paraplegic, be comfortable. Like, he has these socks that he has to put on that help, like, blood circulation. And the guy forgets. And literally at one point, the guy's like, I can't, like, he's having trouble doing something. He's like, well, what's wrong with you? And this woman, I guess she's like a maid or something, she yells at him because she's like, you forgot to put his socks on. He's like, well, I'm sorry. Why won't he put his own socks on? He forgets that the man is paraplegic and that he can't help himself. And that's kind of the beauty of it, is that, sometimes ignorance is bliss can be nice, especially for people who are suffering all the time. I just remember loving so many moments in that movie. And then I tried watching some of the Hollywood, like, takes that the Hollywood American movies that tried to remake this movie. And it was just so much, it didn't capture it as well. So I recommend it. It is French, so you need subtitles, but if you want a beautiful, heart-wrenching, and yet also funny movie, I recommend it. And also, it's not Hollywood. You might be impressed in, how different movies are when they come from a different country. All right, number 6 on my list is Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher, which I read very recently and I absolutely loved, because this is the fairy tale that everyone wants, where instead of the princess being sold off to the prince and the prince is oh so charming and they live happily ever after and there's some other evil force coming after them. No, this one is my sister was given to the prince and I'm pretty sure the prince is a piece of shit, so I want to go kill him. But I don't really know how I'm going to go about that because I'm just a normal lady and I'm in like my 30s, 40s now. So I need to find a way to do this. Let's go ahead and enlist some weird witch that protects a graveyard and has a demon chicken, and we're gonna find some other people along the way and we're gonna do our best to kill the prince. That's the best summary I can give of it, but I will give the actual summary that is given. Mara never wanted to be a hero. As the shy, convent-raised third-born daughter, she escaped the traditional fate of princesses to be married away for the sake of an uncaring throne. But her sister wasn't so fortunate, and after years of silence, Mara is done watching her suffer at the hands of a powerful and abusive prince. Seeking help for her rescue mission, Mara is offered the tools she needs, but only if she can complete 3 seemingly impossible tasks. Build a dog of bones, sew a cloak of nettles, capture moonlight in a jar. But as is the way in tales of princes and witches, doing the impossible is only the beginning. Hero or not, and now joined by a disgraced ex-knight, a reluctant fairy godmother, and an enigmatic grave witch and her foul familiar, Mara might finally have the courage to save her sister and topple a throne. So, yeah, this book was just overall fun. I think that this is the type of book that I will recall constantly because the character herself is she's so relatable. Like you could be her, and yet you're going on these adventures to figure out how to help people, and then you meet fairies that wiggle your teeth with songs, and it gets so gruesome at times. I don't even know how to explain it, but this really felt like a fairy tale for adults. I'm just so entertained by this book, and I feel like it's so short too, and it was able to do so much. It was able to make me feel so connected to the characters. It was able to make me laugh and cry, and the stakes were so very fucking high. At the very end, I was like, no, please no. Oh my God, no, please don't. And it kept me on my toes the whole time. And I think probably one of the things that I really love about it is that the characters are middle-aged. They're not teenagers on some quest. They're not, those young, spry youngins who are just out to save the world. No, they're just middle-aged people. Some of them are way past middle age. And they're like, fuck it, I think it's time to kill a prince. And they all just gang up to do it. And I'm like, it's so great. And the magic in it is so reminiscent of Celtic folklore, of the fact that you speak the name of certain things, or you go to the other side, if I say the other side, people are gonna think Stranger Things. You go to the fairy realm, and it's not, all rainbows and pixies and all that. No, it's don't look at it in the eyes or you might never leave type of thing. I love this, and I do hope that this gets made into a movie because I feel like it could do really well, and it's a short book. You could fit the whole thing into a movie. Be wonderful. Number 5, halfway through this list, we got this. Number 5 is another movie. Now, I wanted to include a Miyazaki movie in here because Hayao Miyazaki was such an influence on my childhood and how I grew up, but I was like, I gotta pick one, and so I picked not necessarily the one that I've watched the most, but probably the one that has in my opinion, the greatest message and the greatest story, and that is Princess Mononoke. So Princess Mononoke came out in 1997. It says, in the 14th century, the harmony that humans, animals, and gods have enjoyed begins to crumble. The protagonist, young Ashitaka, infected by an animal attack, seeks a cure from the deer-like god Shishigami. In his travels, he sees humans ravaging the earth, bringing down the wrath of wolf god Moro and his human companion, Princess Mononoke. His attempts to broker peace between her and the humans brings only conflict. I saw this movie probably the first time when I was quite young, and I mean, honestly, I watched a lot of Hayao Miyazaki movies when I was very young because my parents, you know, they thought, oh, well, it's animation, it's for kids. Then they watched one of them and they're like, wow, that was an amazing movie. And they kept watching them with us. So I watched it when I was really young and, you know, I thought it was cool. I was like, ooh, wolves, ooh, very cool girl who fights and is super strong. But when I watched it again when I was older, I was like, dang, this movie has, I feel like I have this theme that I really enjoy of like, I don't want to call it industrialization, but moving from the simple life of living off of the earth, and people would say almost like heathens, right? Moving from heathens to civilized, right? Kind of like with Juniper and Thorn. I just really enjoy it because it really shows, well, what is better? Is it better to, you know, rely on myths and struggle with the land and potentially have to constantly survive, or to evolve and use industry to surpass what we can do and use our knowledge and our ability to mechanize so that we can have an easier life, right? And all these things. And I feel like Princess Mononoke is a lot like what Juniper and Thorn had as like a plot, which is the dangers of both worlds, right? Because in Princess Mononoke, yeah, the forest side, the pagan side, I guess you could almost say, it's beautiful and it's magical, and it's these gods and this connection to the earth and this protection of the forests and the forest spirits and all that. Like, it's very cute, but at the same time it's treacherous and it's extremely difficult to live in that. And then there's, you know, the humans, which are kind of, you know, the civilized side, which are polluting everything around, and it's dark and it's gross and it's, you know, it's destroying all that beautiful stuff, but it helps people live. Like, it showed it with the lepers, right? Where the lepers are, they try to help them, they try to heal them. There's a kindness to that side as well, of just trying to help each other survive and have an easier time of it. And I thought that Princess Mononoke just did such a good job of showing that there is no true evil. Neither side was evil. Neither side was bad. It was just the conflict. And, well, what do you do? Like, can you stop the industrialization, and are all the gods gonna just die because, well, humans want to live better? Or are we somehow going to be able to live in symbiosis? I don't know. I thought it was such a beautiful movie, and I think that if you have watched it, maybe watch it again. Try to like notice more things in that movie that you could, you know, read more into. And if you haven't watched it, fucking watch it. Watch any Miyazaki movie. All right, next one on the list. Number 4 is The Last House on Needless Street. This book I read this year. I'm blown away by it. The way this author wrote this book. Now, I know that people say like, oh, you'll never see the twists coming, right? Because that's what we want from like a mystery thriller, mystery horror. We're like, well, I don't want to expect it. Or sometimes it's okay. But when you are caught by surprise, that's like an amazing feeling. But this one was amazing because I was like, oh, I know what's happening. Yeah, I totally know what's happening. And then you read a little more, I'm like, I have no idea what's happening. I'm like, oh, now I know what's happening. And then a little bit later, I'm like, I thought I knew what was happening. So it just constantly kept me interested. Now, I will read the inside. In a boarded up house on a dead-end street at the edge of the wild Washington woods lives a family of 3. A teenage girl who isn't allowed outside. Not after last time. A man who drinks alone in front of his TV, trying to ignore the gaps in his memory. And a house cat who loves napping and reading the Bible. An unspeakable secret binds them together, but when a new neighbor moves in next door, what is buried among the birch trees may come back to haunt them all. So, yeah, I don't really want to say much more about this book because honestly, the details that made it so impressive might end up being spoilers. All I will say is that this book very heavily represents mental illness. So the reason that this book really is very important to me and is in one of my top 10 is because mental illness is something that I am very close to, I guess. So when I was a teen, I went to see a psychologist because I wasn't doing good in school. My grades were dropping and I was like getting very distant, and my parents, you know, they told me like, well, what's going on? Like, they were ready to yell at me and all that. And I kind of broke down and I told them, I see ghosts. My parents' reaction to that was, Well, if she's lying, she needs to go see a therapist. And if she's not lying, she still needs to go see a therapist. So either way, there's a problem here, so we're going to try and fix it. And so my parents spent a lot of time looking for just the help that I needed. And throughout all those sessions, it just kind of went away. And I remember just one day being like, oh, wow, I don't see anything anymore. I don't hear anything anymore that isn't there. Now I live in like this reality of, was I actually lying? Like, was I twisting it? And I mean, obviously I went back into everything that I went through, and I had a near-death experience when I was 11, and several studies show that that can affect you psychologically a lot. So this book and the way that the psychology of these characters is portrayed and shown just kind of really hit a spot for me where I'm just like, this is why it's so important to recognize that a person's psychological health is extremely important, because it can change a person so much. And I'm grateful that I went to therapy. Very grateful. Not that I would have turned out like any characters in here, because it gets pretty horrific, but still, like, I don't know. I feel this book is, I'm not gonna forget about it. I keep saying that about all these books, but I also have so many others that I want to include into my top 10, but I don't have enough room, and I want to try and narrow it down to like the ones that have impacted me the most. And this one, yeah, strong. Very, very strong impact. It is a horror though. I would say there are trigger warnings, so if you're sensitive to any of that, look up some trigger warnings for it. In third place, we've got Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. I have not read anything else by this author, and I got this, as you can see, through Book of the Month. I have since canceled Book of the Month, but this book was hot damn. I did not expect it to be the way that it was. So let me read the inside. A black father, a white father, two dead sons, a quest for revenge and redemption. Ike Randolph has been out of jail for 15 years, with not so much as a speeding ticket in that time. But a black man with cops at the door knows to be afraid. The last thing he expects to hear is that his son, Isaiah, has been murdered along with Isaiah's white husband, Derek. Ike has never fully accepted his son, but is devastated by his loss. Derek's father, Buddy Lee, was almost as ashamed of Derek for being gay as Derek was ashamed of his father's criminal record. Buddy Lee still has contacts in the underworld, though, and he wants to know who killed his boy. Ike and Buddy, two ex-cons with little in common other than a criminal past and a love for their dead sons, band together in their desperate desire for revenge. In their quest to do better for their sons in death than they did in life, these hardened men will confront their own prejudices about their sons and each other as they rain down vengeance upon those who hurt their boys. I cried a lot reading this book because I've never had to experience any kind of like disowning or hatred from my family for being who I am. If anything, in high school, my mom literally looked at me and was like, are you lesbian? And I was like, no. And she's like, okay, but you know it's okay if you are. Like, I remember having that whole conversation with her. I was like, no, I'm not lesbian. I am interested in women, but like I am interested in both. And she's like, that's cool. Like, my family is probably the epitome of what everyone would love to have, where they just accept you for who the fuck you are. They're like, we just want you to be happy, and that's it. So reading a book like this kind of really helped me understand that it gave the perspective of those who reject their own children for being gay, and then they hate themselves when they lose them. It's that whole idea of, you know, you don't know what you've got that's good until it's gone. And the path that these fathers go down and the emotions that they experience are so raw and they're so intense. And it's the kind of book that I would want to have a parent who's rejecting their child for being gay or for being anything that they are, that they like, that the parent doesn't agree with, whether it's like, you know, oh, they dress goth or something. I want a parent like that to read this book just to realize how stupid they are. Like, that is your child. Stop rejecting them for who they are and love them now, because the moment they're gone, this is what you're going to experience. You're going to experience all that regret of not spending more time with them and being with them. And these dads did that. Now, on top of that, these dads are learning how to be more accepting, right? Because in their quest to figure out who killed their sons, they're obviously meeting a lot of the people that the sons had in their lives who are queer. And so they kind of, you know, they have to learn to not be such assholes. But even the quest to find who killed their sons was well done. And there were moments where I was terrified because so the sons have a little girl, they have a daughter, they adopted a daughter. I was so scared for her at certain points in the book. I just remember talking up and down about this book to everyone I could because I was like, this is amazing. You need to read it. It has action, it has emotion, it has very strong message, it has relationships, you know, romantic and familial, everything. It's so amazing. So if you have not read it, I really recommend it. It's powerful in my opinion, and I feel like some people don't agree, and I don't know how you couldn't agree. Okay, number 2. This one is always gonna be in my top 10. Why? Because I have rewatched this movie so many goddamn times. I cannot tell you how often I can recite the lines in the movie. Anyways, the movie is Treasure Planet, which came out in 2002, and I'm going to read the little synopsis for you. The legendary Loot of 1,000 Worlds inspires an intergalactic treasure hunt when 15-year-old Jim Hawkins stumbles upon a map to the greatest pirate trove in the universe in Walt Disney Pictures' thrilling animated space adventure, Treasure Planet. Based on one of the greatest adventure stories ever told, Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. This film follows Jim's fantastic journey across the parallel universe as a cabin boy aboard a glittering space galleon. Why is Treasure Planet so amazing to me? Well, let me tell you. First of all, it's a Disney movie that doesn't have a princess. It literally is just an adventure, but it's also the story of a boy growing up. It is a coming of age story. Maybe I really love coming of age stories now that I think about it. Well, they have to be well done. Anyways, Jim is this cocky, arrogant boy who he believes that he can do more, or that he doesn't need everyone around him to tell him what to do, that he can just figure it out. He's your typical teenage boy who just doesn't want to go to school. Okay? That's the best I can show or explain how he is. And he ends up having this opportunity to go on a treasure hunt. And let me tell you, the animation of this movie, I loved it. It is the epitome of what I want from a sci-fi. Everything is strange and weird, and yet you understand what it is and what it does and where you are, and the aliens were all so freaking cool and so unique. And the fact that it used actual ships, wooden ships with a sail in space, I haven't seen anything else do something like that, and it's so freaking cool. Yeah, obviously you wouldn't be able to breathe, but I don't care. It is so cool. So that alone is one of my favorite things about it, is that, and that's part of the storytelling, okay? The animation, of course it is. Everyone knows that. But then the fact that you see Jim progressively grow, and his relationship with Silver is, gosh, it's so good. It's, Jim doesn't have a father. His father left when he was a kid, and he meets Silver, he's not the best example for a kid, and yet he protects Jim and he cares for him, and yet also pushes him around, and it's so nice. I can't even explain all the things that I love about it because I love all of it. So just watch it. It's a beautiful story. I love it. I wish there had been a sequel, but at the same time, I'm glad there wasn't, because it's such a great movie that you just can't give it a sequel without possibly ruining it. So yeah. And why did I not put it in first place? That is something that I've been asking myself. Why did I not put it in first place? Well, maybe because the story in itself is pretty simple, and I can see why some people wouldn't enjoy it as much. It does play on a lot of cliches and a lot of things that you would expect. It's not particularly very original in its story. The animation and the world of it is, in my opinion, very original, but it's not in first place because there is a book that did blow me away this year that I want to reread it already, but that is December Park by Ronald Malfi. This book, I discovered it because of Violet Prin's channel on YouTube. I'll link her down below. She has great horror recommendations and she does a lot of unboxing videos. But I discovered this book on her channel and I don't even remember what she said about it, but I instantly wanted to read it. And this is also one of the reasons why I said maybe I just really like coming of age stories, because this is a coming of age horror story. Now, I've never read anything like that before, and I'm pretty sure this is the only coming of age horror story that I've read. But, oh my gosh, this author, so usually horror books are, in my opinion, a lot more plot focused and a lot more atmosphere focused. Very rarely do they really go deeply into characters, like the growth of a character. I don't think so anyways. I could be totally talking out of my ass right now. But this book, I feel like just so great with characters. It feels character focused. Like the plot is almost secondary because okay, let me just read the back. In the fall of 1993, 15-year-old Angelo Mazzoni sees his first dead body. The murder is linked to the Piper, the possible abductor of 3 other children who haven't been found over the past few months. Some people in town say the woods are haunted, but Angelo and his friends head in anyway to search the darkness for a monster. What they find there will change who they are and everything they once believed in. So the back is quite vague, but I will say this. My favorite part about this book, and what it is mostly about, is the kids, is these teenage boys who are the epitome of 1990s teenagers who, you know, they smoke cigarettes, they ride around on bikes in the neighborhood at night, they're into music and bands, and they play pranks on each other, and they're always there for each other. But they're also good kids. Like, they do their chores, they come home when their parents tell them to. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're real kids. They felt very real, and their group dynamic was so genuine, and I could see myself in it when I was in high school. Like, I could see myself in that group when I was 15, 16. And I don't even know what else to say about this, because then they obviously start investigating this murder, which they shouldn't. And oh my gosh, so many times I was like, call the cops, call the fucking cops, you are not detectives, stop it. But, you know, they're fucking teenagers and they're stupid. Although a few of them were like, shouldn't we just call your dad? Because one of them has a dad who's a cop. And you're like, yes, call his dad. And it's funny because a lot of the things that they discover, they don't seem to have a lot of weight in, like, driving the, you know, finding out who's killing the people. And really, like, the whole investigation seems very secondary to just what the kids are going through and, like, the trauma that our main character has gone through because his brother passed away and he is going through the motions kind of, and then he meets his neighbor who he just moved in and it's got a creepy mom. Like, there's all these little side things and it was just tied in so well. This author did such a good job and I can't wait to read more by him. I bought 2 other books and I still haven't read them and I really should. I'm gonna stop now because I think I've been recording for way too long because I ramble and rant about my favorite books. Oh, all right. Well, anyways, that's all of my favorite standalone stories. Please let me know if any of these are ones that you've read before or that you've watched. Let me know also what are some of your favorites of all time, because honestly, I will check them out. If they're movies too, I'll more easily be able to check them out. Books is a little bit harder. I think all of us book nerds can agree that our TBRs will never go away. So yeah, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you have a rest of your day nice. Yeah, I hope you have a rest of your day nice. Bye!